Hi, I'm Philipp, founder and CEO of LI.FI. You can see it already. Perfect. Good. I'm going to talk a little bit about intents, about the liquidity market, how fragmented it is, and why LI.FI today is function as it does, and what we are aiming for over the next month. So what do we want? In an ideal world, we would want to be able to go in and out of any asset position within one transaction. Fast, secure, and as cheap as possible. And the way you want that is immediately. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to do research. And as a developer, we don't want to have a huge integration overhead, right? We don't want to do all that research, talk to a bunch of teams which solution to use. This is so much overhead for us. But if you look at the asset layer, it's fairly complex. We have L1s, L2s, L3s, where we have native assets and assets like ERC20 and SPLs, if you're on Solana. On top of that, now there's a new breed of native assets, so to say. It's multi-chain assets. All these messaging bridges have their own multi-chain token standards. Layer 0 has OFT, Axelar has ITS, Wormhole has entity. And that just creates more fragmentation and more overhead for anyone that needs to deal with exchanging assets, right? So we see all of that as that asset layer where we mint tokens, RWAs, NFTs, and this alone is fairly complex. And then to simplify a bit of that when it comes to moving assets across chains, we not only mint and burn assets, we have the canonical bridges and messaging bridges. We also have liquidity networks. And these liquidity networks, they simplify or they at least speed up the transacting across bridges, across chains. And all of that is not only complex, but also when it comes to security, it's on a spectrum. We have so many ways to validate and verify cross-chain transactions that this becomes fairly complex. And for the most people, like for retail, it doesn't really matter. Retail doesn't care. But from an application perspective, let's say you're a top-level application. Let's say you're a Robinhood. You have 26 million users. You actually do care. You look at crypto, you see all these big hacks, and you're like, where do we even start? Like that whole thing I said earlier where I said, like, hey, you want to have it immediately. You don't want to have that huge integration overhead. You don't want to have that research overhead. It becomes so complex to educate yourself around these topics if there are so many different kinds of trust assumptions we have to make and so many ways to derive security from. And when it comes to swapping and so on, it's not getting easier. Like the moment we talk about same-chain swaps, we look at DEXs, like we all know the brand Uniswap, and then we get aggressive pushes from players like 0x, 1inch, and they say, hey, we are better. And they are better because DEXs just give us price functions, and DEX aggregators, they are responsible for reducing slippage, and they actually all perform different. This is a simplified perspective on our volume and how DEX aggregators are getting market share. And the fun fact is, it's not only that, this is constantly changing. This is a perspective on the current momentum, and it's even different chain by chain. So again, a simplified perspective, we support way more DEX aggregators, but just for the sake of simplifying this, like the way a DEX aggregator performs differs per chain, it differs per day, and it changes every month because they're improving the algorithms. And actually, because we have so much fragmentation around all these assets I've shown here, right? Like all these different asset standards, DEX aggregators are constantly forced to implement new liquidity sources. And actually, the amount of liquidity sources is one of the key differentiators for different DEX aggregators. And so it happens that every now and then, once a year, we have 1-2 new DEX aggregators coming up that gain a significant amount of market share. So one of the strongest players last year were, for example, Odos. 0xV2 was a huge step up, and KyberSwap. Like 1 year ago, KyberSwap was not appearing on that cycle at all, right? They released a new version, suddenly, boom, back. And well, other DEX aggregators now again need to step up their game. And because aggregating liquidity sources is so much work, they are also expanding fairly slowly. In general, we should celebrate that. I think that this heterogeneity across liquidity sources and across exchange solutions is incredibly valuable. It pushes the space forward more towards TradFi, which is especially competitive. And at the end of the day, we want to have best price execution. And the thing is that all that fragmentation we see in crypto right now, that Ethereum has to scale paradigm, these L2s, these rollups as a services, I can tell you guys, this is still day one. If we look at blockchain from the outside, it is a new form of saving data. It's a specific use case. And if you look at that timeline, beginning 2000, it was like MS SQL, Oracle. And then like towards the mid-20s, we had like MySQL and PostgreSQL as open source solutions gaining more and more traction. Then we had NoSQL, like Facebook releasing Cassandra and making actually all of that larger scale. Social media applications were the first web applications that actually needed that scale, that amount of data. And from there, we came into big data, like with data lake solutions like Snowflake. And then we saw more and more specialized databases like graph databases like Neo4j or time series databases like, there's so many, ClickHouse. And document storage, MongoDB got a lot of traction over the past 5 years. MongoDB is almost the go-to database these days to start with. And yeah, it's changing. So blockchains appear in the database space. And I think many people are not aware of that. And also the blockchain space just has started. And we are just getting to a point of product maturity where we can engage with blockchains in a seamless way. And we will see so much more innovation and specialization around blockchains over the next years. So this fragmentation I was describing in the beginning, guys, this is just the beginning of all of it. As blockchains finds greater adoption, we need much more scale, much more specialization. So we not only need to solve interop on a small scale, it actually has to happen on a much, much larger scale. And while this is happening, we need to come up with systems that make it easier, right? So one idea is, hey, before you have to worry about how to transact, let's introduce a new concept. Why don't we delegate this borrowing to a third party? So instead of sending assets from one chain to another via a bridge directly as a user or developer, let's just express this intention as an intent and delegate this intent to a third party, to a solver network. And this is where the space is at right now, right? Everyone's building intent systems. But let's talk about that. An intent system is a marketplace. So in theory, this is great. This is amazing, but it's a marketplace. And guys, when we have learned anything from Web 2.0, marketplace execution is the hardest of all. It's the king discipline of all business models. It's the king discipline because it has the greatest mode, which is distribution and network effects, but it's the hardest to execute because we have a chicken and egg problem. So best case, we have like the one side where we have applications and they can swap, bridge, land, buy NFTs and whatsoever. And on the other side, we have solvers that fulfill these orders. And in a perfect world, it would look like that. In a perfect world, it would look like on Amazon. On Amazon, the user sees the products that they can buy, and the merchants are like, here's my inventory list, this is the products I have, and this is what I can do for you, and here's your DHL link, you can monitor the parcel delivery and all of that, right? This would be a perfect world. But because we are in a decentralized fashion, this is not the case. Like, solvers can access everything. So solvers are not going to be the one providing their inventory list. That's not happening. So building that marketplace became much harder because suddenly I do not only need to bring both worlds together, I also need to build a lot of stuff myself to make this work. So as a marketplace, I have to have an inventory list. What are the available assets? At which price? I need to provide a capability list. Which kind of intents can I even delegate, like zaps or lending, borrowing, whatsoever. And the status monitoring, which is fairly complex, I have to do myself too. Because it's not only like for swapping on same-chain swaps, it's also like I need to be able to track all these different blockchains. When we talk about bridging, it's not one transaction, it's two transactions, source and destination chain. I need to sync that. I need to, even this simple task is becoming complex suddenly. And the solver does only one thing, it executes. Now, we have a chicken egg problem. So I go to a solver like, hey, this is my idea. I built this for you, and we're going to have all these applications. And the solver's like, yeah. why don't you talk to me once you have these applications? I'm like, okay, right, I come back. So I go to applications, I get to Robinhood and be like, Robinhood, listen, this is my idea. We're going to build this marketplace. We're going to provide you all these features, value-added services. It's going to be great. And they're like, yeah, but can you give me some pricing data? Like, how do you compete with like a normal DEX aggregator? And you're like, yeah, solvers will come once you are there. So you have that chicken egg problem. And the chicken egg problem is the hardest part about marketplace execution. We have seen this with Uber, Amazon. Amazon was selling books themselves out of their garage. Uber was providing, they were driving themselves. The founders were driving the first users in Uber. Like Airbnb, they were begging their friends to rent out their apartments, took nice pictures. And so the way to execute a marketplace is to proxy one side. You pretend that one side is already there. Right? Amazon selling books themselves, and then once they get the first clients, they go to the first book merchant and be like, hey, I have clients that buy books. Don't you want to sell your books directly? So that they don't have to do it anymore. But it's hard to bootstrap. And we did that at LI.FI. So we started aggregating asset lists. Then we started aggregating asset prices. And then DEX aggregators and bridges, we brought it all together in one API. It was the first step. And clients, like larger clients, were like, well, we need value-adding services. So we're like, okay. So we built transaction monitoring, we built customer support tooling, like all of that. It was like a decent amount of work. LI.FI is 75 people big. For a DeFi company, that is fairly big, right? People always like, I want to keep my team small and lean. Yeah, for a marketplace, that's not an option. You need to build aggressively to get to a point where a Robinhood trusts you. And eventually now, 3.5 years in, we are able to offer swapping, bridging, and arbitrary cross-chain zaps. Finally, we are far away from lending, we are far away from derivatives, NFTs never touched, right? And RWAs are not even there yet. Slowly, they're coming. But this is us after like almost 4 years, and because we have done that work, we were able to win MetaMask, Phantom, Binance, Robinhood, you name it. We have the biggest customers now, and now as I have this distribution power, I can finally open up that site. Now I can finally become a marketplace. And this is where LI.FI is today. So essentially, on top of the aggregation, I can now open up this whole thing to solver systems. So we just acquired Catalyst, which is a cross-VM intent system bridge, and Pioneer, which is a solver. This solver here is not aiming to be competitive with any solver in the market. What we want is, we want to be able to expand as fast as the space expands. And for us, that's very exhausting because, let me tell you, whenever we were closing a client and they were asking, hey, are you going to be on Berachain day one? We're like, yeah, sure, let me knock 20 doors and ask these bridges, hey, are you going to be there day one? We're so dependent on third parties as a marketplace, it's kind of hard. Like the organizational overhead, the communication overhead, implementation overhead, all of that was slowing us down. So we're like, we at least need our own solution to be independent. And that's what we can do now. So LI.FI is going to be much, much faster in the expansion, which is great. But then also, looking at the complexity of the space, like in a best case scenario, I would have a huge network of solvers. A huge network of solvers that can fulfill any form of order and intent. But if you remember how complex that asset layer was, I was describing in the beginning, right? All these different chains, all these different bridges, all these different asset formats, mapping all that data. It's like, essentially, a solver is nothing else than an aggregator. But like we were just providing access, a solver has to be competitive. They need to find arbitrage strategies to be able to provide competitive pricing. So for a solver to actually be everywhere where we are right now already, super hard. So for a long, long period of time, I'm telling you, the best way to have one solution without having to worry about anything is a hybrid approach of aggregation. So LI.FI is going to keep on doing that, market neutral, and having a solver system, having an intent system, having that marketplace in place so that essentially we can onboard solvers as they expand, as they come up, as they innovate and become more competitive. So we are there, we start working with solvers today, but it will take years until they are at a point, once again, where they are at the point that they can actually replace us as an aggregator. And we look forward to that because we want that end state, that end vision of an ultimate marketplace where you essentially have just the application layer, you have one API, and you essentially get direct access to decentralized liquidity and implicit access to centralized liquidity. Because what a good solver does, a good solver is nothing else than a market maker. A good solver is a market maker, and that market maker is able to arbitrage across centralized and decentralized liquidity and is able to source liquidity from prop desks and OTC, and all we have in the middle is an intent system that plugs into all kinds of solvers and payment for order flow systems to delegate that execution. But I'm telling you, we are years ahead of that. And right now, we are seeing 30 marketplaces being built, and 80% of them are going to die. And it's tough. It's fierce. So many of you already know LI.FI. You know, many of you have already implemented us or heard of us and somehow engaged with our API. So I felt it might be a good idea to mention our roadmap this year. We are heavily working on refactorings, so we're going to have incredible speed improvements this year. We have a new graph traversal algorithm that is machine learning based, which allows us to actually allow any-to-any asset routing across any chain. It's going to be really fast and comprehensive. We're also going to be able to support all multi-chain assets via Glacis. Glacis is a company that has done that exhaustive job of aggregating message passing protocols. So think of it like a Cisco. I don't know, who of you remembers Cisco? Oh, a few, right? So essentially, Glacis not only allows you to access all these messaging protocols, it also allows you to build firewalls and have certain thresholds and security mechanisms and logics in place. So if you want to build enterprise-grade applications that are able to interop multi-chain, Glacis is your go-to partner. We have an exclusive partnership when it comes to multi-chain assets, and really looking forward to that. It's going to be live in the next 2-3 weeks. And also, we are expanding beyond EVM. We are supporting around 40 EVM chains. Did Solana, Bitcoin last year, Sui, Aptos, Tron coming this year. So we are aggressively expanding, and also are able to. We're going to be able to deploy on new EVM chains within a day, and day one support. All of that becomes much more permissionless and open. So yeah, extremely excited about all of this. Essentially, that's where we are right now. We want to meet the space where it's at, because LI.FI has a great oversight on where's interop right now. So if you have any questions around interoperability and all these kinds of different solutions, come to us, talk to us. We are positioned very enterprisey, so we consult our clients, and then we might be the best solution, but we are also always happy to direct people into direct integrations, right? Like, we are not always the perfect solution, depending on your needs, but if you have questions, we are happy to consult you. And we want to pave the way for the future. We think, and we truly believe that it is fundamental that someone abstracts away all the complexity, and that's what we are taking care of. And that's what really helps the space grow, because thanks to us, all these top-level applications like a Robinhood, they can really adopt crypto fast and as it shapes out, and they don't have to worry too much. So thank you, guys. If you're a developer, you want to implement us, this is your QR code, and this stage is not made for it. So just check out li.fi, contact me on Telegram, and thank you for listening.